Oh, it is now Sunday, slightly after 1 o'clock, and we are doing another episode of How It Works, which is a show about people with conditions and the way they're managing them through some type of recovery. I'm here with my sponsor, one of my two sponsors. I have sponsors in two different 12-step programs, and this 12-step program deals with codependency and specifically targeting people who have friends and family that struggle with alcoholism. And this is the program where I actually got my start in recovery, but I participate in several right now. And well, I've said enough about myself. I'd like to welcome my guest this week, Don H. And Don, thank you for joining me. I'm looking forward to another great episode and hearing what you have to say about your conditions and recovery. So,
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I just had a birthday. I'm 76 now, and I'm still working, but I work for a nonprofit that brought me joy and recovery, and hopefully has helped other people get started in their recovery. So that's where I'm at right now. I love what I'm doing, and I find every day I learn something about I don't want to say the mistakes, but all the mismanagement I had done with my life and how these programs that I'm in and the people that I work with have helped me really get to where I need to be, understand myself better, and live a healthier lifestyle. And my relationships are so much better with people, less judgmental and more loving.
that's great. I think you became my sponsor around 2016.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Um,
Real quickly, I was very impressed with a share you did at a meeting that we went to, and then we just talked for a while and stuff, and then we decided to work the program together a little bit, and it turned out really to be an education, I think, for both of us, and it was really nice because we're different personalities, but we have the same type of viewpoint about a lot of things, and that made it really nice to work with you, and it also brought to me the idea that for the first time in my old life, I could be with people that I would never in my public life or my even my work life would meet or be associated with, and it's been not only exciting, it's been very refreshing and very spiritual. Really cool.
yeah, well, and I should mention, I mean, you're one of the few people who I've dealt with in my life that I've never butt heads with. And that's very rare. I butt heads with almost everybody, and you and I have never had a cross word between us. Um,
I don't think that. Yeah, I think you're right. I think sometimes we've agreed to disagree, but I don't think we've ever got loud or just said, "What the hell's going on with you?" There I go with my swearing that I said I wouldn't do. But anyway, yeah, it's been a really good relationship, and again, I say because I work a program, I can do that because I can run pretty hot and I can get pretty angry, but I really feel like there's been a spiritual awakening and just says, you know what, uh, that's not you, Don. That's the mask that you've worn for so long. You don't have to wear that anymore. You don't have to be who you used to be, and that's very comforting.
but let's start at the beginning. What got you involved in recovery, and what are you doing today to maintain your spiritual fitness?
Oh, that's pretty easy. My wife was a substance abuser. I had no idea what that was all about. I knew that she was hurting about something. I wasn't sure exactly what it was. I figured that after a while, once she got her balance back, she had just retired, or no, she was going to retire. She was worried about that, which amazed me because I'm just the opposite. If I could retire, that'd be the greatest thing that ever happened to me. So she had retired. She had some weight loss surgery that went okay, but it really put a dent in her psychologically. So she got into a program of recovery, and the first thing she said after being home about a week or two, and I was being my old codependent self. I know we'll get into that later. She said, you need to go to a meeting. So I went to the meeting, and my mind was set that I'd go to 3 or 4 until I was all right. At that point in our relationship, there wasn't a lot of trust and stuff. I could see that she was getting better, but I just thought that, you know, I'm kind of an isolator, so I don't want to talk to a lot of people. At that time, I didn't even know what isolation meant. I just knew that I didn't want to share myself with anybody. But when I got into a meeting and talked to other people, I thought, this sounds pretty good. I'll go to a couple more because that's what they advised me to do. So I ended up going to like 7 a week. Actually, I went to 2 in one day sometimes. So I just felt like that. I found a place where I could share myself. I never had felt comfortable doing that. I had a mask on that said everything's okay, but I was miserable inside. So I knew part of that was because I had to deal with what she was going through, but a lot of it was of my own making. So it was really important for me that I found this place. And then I found people that I could really identify with, and on and on and on. So, when you get into something like that and it really helps you, you think, wow, they must have invented this for me. But when you see all the recovery and stuff, you realize that, again, repeating myself a little bit here, but you don't have to be who you used to be. You don't have to react so much to everything. You can think things out. Even if you just take just baby steps, you can get to where you need to be.
Right. You had mentioned trust issues. Can you give us some examples of the codependent behaviors you used to have, but have improved since you've been in recovery?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that I was a control freak, which, we kind of call codependency if we get smart enough to know that's what it is. But it was fear. Fear and anxiety ruled my life. And when I looked at my wife when she was drinking, I thought, you can stop whenever you want to. That's stupid. But what I didn't realize really was that I did the same thing she did. I just coped in a different way. I didn't use a substance to make me better. I did isolation, control. Control was a big thing with me. If I controlled my environment, I would be safe. And the funny thing is, it's just the opposite. You're not controlling anything.
Right.
The only thing that you're doing really is isolating yourself and not even knowing who you are. You're so busy trying to control people, places, and things that you don't have time for yourself. It's weird.
Yeah, it's definitely, for me, it's a matter of focus. I'm focused outside of myself all the time, then I'm ignoring what's going on with me.
Yeah, and we don't even know ourselves. We get to the point where we're thinking, if this person would just do what they need to do. I often tell the story when I'm in meetings of, I married this woman because she was so different than me. I loved how she was. And then I tried to change her into me. And I was a mess. Wild.
Yeah, crazy. So now you've been in recovery for how long?
It's a little over 10 years now. For me, I was really, really fortunate and blessed. When I first came into the program, the first 2 people I met was the sponsor that I have almost 11 years later. And the second person I met was the guy who trained me in the job I am now, which is helping people who are dealing with loved ones with substance abuse, etc. So right away, I got blessed by my higher power. And the funny thing is that I didn't. I always believed in a higher power. I always knew there was something outside myself, but I didn't have faith. And that was the big problem. I didn't have faith. So my tendency was to depend on myself. And of course, because I lived in fear so much, which I didn't even really understand that too much either, I never really got a hold of what happiness was, what love was. Now, I had love in my life, don't get me wrong, but I didn't know how to practice it and make it feel real to me. So the program really helped me in that sense. And then once I got involved in it, I realized that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. That made me very comfortable and willing to change, because I knew, hey, if I didn't change, I would still be miserable and I would still be blaming it on everybody else. outside of me rather than taking responsibility. And that's what the whole program is really about. When I say working a program, it's about being responsible for yourself. So it means you have to internalize some of this stuff, start loving yourself right where you are, and make the changes that you can make in yourself that make you the best person that you can be, because that's all you can be, is the best person you can be. And it takes you away from trying to change others, because that's an impossibility. So that's where your misery comes from.
Right, right. And so would it be accurate to say that these 12 steps have become part of a new lifestyle that you have?
Yeah, it becomes a roadmap for you. It becomes that idea that, you know what, I can always turn to these steps to figure out where I'm at. Am I angry? Am I out of control? Am I feeling sorry for myself? Am I not taking responsibility for the things that I should be responsible for? And am I being the best person I can be? Now, when I get down to the 11th, 10th, 11th, 12th step, I can start sharing these things that I've learned, not by trying to make people change, but to let them see the change in me, to tell my story about where I was, who I was, how afraid I was of almost everything outside myself, and then trying to control the uncontrollable. And so I get crazy. I get, I respond with anger and resentment. And who's miserable? I am. Nobody else is. They just walk away.
Right, right. So how much of your recovery would you say, how big of a part of service work is in your recovery?
I think it's one of the biggest parts. I don't think if I had done so, my sponsor, like I said, I've had him for almost 11 years now. Immediately got me in service work, and it was funny. We had a friend, unfortunately, that passed away, and she led a great meeting.
Mhm.
And so my sponsor said, me and you are going to keep this meeting alive. I said, okay. So I thought, well, we're going to trade every once in a while, leading a meeting. That'll be fine. I'll get some experience. And I don't mind leading meetings. I've done it at work before, so I can do it. But it ended up me leading the meeting. After a while, I left that meeting, but I left it when it was very strong. I felt we'd really accomplished a lot there. And because I was working heavily in Al-Anon and stuff, I was still trying to find that balance so that it wouldn't be all Al-Anon, but Al-Anon would be, pardon me, I knew I wasn't supposed to mention that, but the meetings would be my roadmap to recovery. And I knew that if I could find some balance between meetings, working, and of course, sharing my life with my sponsor and my family, I'd be in pretty good shape. And that's what happened. Didn't happen all at once. We're always a work in progress, because it's as you know, it's very much a personal journey, but you have to share that personal journey with others, and that's where we get our recovery, and that's where we get down there and want to help other people by just showing what happened to us, telling our stories, and then hoping that they can glean something from us. But we learn how to love people better, and we learn what love is all about. It's not the kissy face thing that we think of as a kid, or if you loved me, you wouldn't do that. It has nothing to do with that. Love is action. You got to take action when you love somebody, and love
Right, which
everything.
which brings me to another point. So part of your service work is you man the phones at a call center, people who are
Right.
struggling with loved ones who have alcoholism problems. I'm sure one of the most common things is they're going to call you and they're going to ask you, what do I need to do to get my alcoholic to stop drinking? Is that, fairly common question?
Yeah. They call in and they're hurting. We call it step one, powerless over people, places, and things, and our life has become unmanageable. A lot of people don't admit that. It takes them a long time to get there, but when they first call, they just want somebody to be nice to them, really. Think about that. They're living in this life where nothing's going right. They're trying to control everything. They can't control anything. Uh, the abuser is abusing the substance, whatever it is, and they love them. but they can't change them. And so now they're calling and saying, I need help. And then you tell them something like, well, you got to get to a meeting. Well, that's not the pill I wanted. I want you to tell me exactly what I have to say to him or her that'll stop them from drinking. And that's or drugging or whatever it is,
Yep.
whatever their addiction is. Well, that's the problem. The problem is that you can't. They can't. You can't. So what you have to do, and what me and you and several of the people that have worked this program, hundreds of people, thousands of people, know that they have to change themselves and look at things differently, and then clear their mind of all this emotional baggage that they have, and figure out what they're going to do next with a clear mind and help from others. And that's kind of how it works. Yeah.
I'm actually getting messages from Selena, so hold on a second. She and I must have had some miscommunication about today.
She's in a different time zone.
Yeah, she's in a different time zone, and yeah, so she didn't realize I had one today, so maybe the email got lost. So she's not going to join us, but hi Selena, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry I didn't get to meet her.
Yeah, I'm sorry too. She's a wonderful lady. But with the huge time zone difference, we're 6 hours different, so it's
Yeah.
it's a little bit of coordinating to get things together on these things. So yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned the powerlessness, and as I said, I began in this program for codependency, and I understand these are anonymous fellowships, so we try to avoid mentioning the names of them. It's not a big
Yeah.
deal. I can tell people what programs I'm in without any fear or shame or concerns about it. It's the anonymity of other people that I'm really protecting. So I started out in a fellowship for codependency, and then after about 7 years of recovery in that group, I finally got honest enough to put down the bottle. And I can say from personal experience, if you have loved ones who have drinking problems or drugging problems, they can't control themselves. People think it's a choice, and it's absolutely not. The people that when you're trapped in an addiction, there's this illusion of choice. You think, yeah, I'm choosing to do this, but the reality is I didn't realize that it was something I didn't really want at all until I stopped. When I had that last drink, when I finally hit bottom and went, this is completely unmanageable.
Right.
And there's two parts of that first step. First is admitting that you have a problem, and the second is realizing that you can't fix it on your own. You need help, you know. So that's the unmanageable part. It's like first I had to admit I was an alcoholic, and second I had to admit that this is unmanageable for me, and I haven't personally been able to fix it, so I need help. And ultimately, me as an addict, I get drunk, but we as a fellowship stay sober. So, speaking of it from the alcoholic side, and I'm sure a lot of what you're doing in the call center is explaining to people that the reason they need to focus on themselves is because not only can you not control the alcoholic or drug addict in your lives, but either can they. That really it's a matter of them hitting bottom, and after they hit bottom, now there's hope of recovery.
Yeah, and that's the problem too. We don't know when they're going to hit rock bottom. So do we decide that, hey, I'm not going to get any help for myself? I'll just hang around until they hit rock bottom. What if they never hit rock bottom? What if they hit rock bottom 10 years from now? You're going to be miserable for 10 years? So what I try to explain to people is that you just need some place to go where people have experienced what you have. Talk to them, share, just listen if you want. It's up to you. But being around people that have gone through what you have, because one thing you're going to get out of it is realizing you're not alone, that you have been isolating, and that even if it's for that 45 minutes or an hour that you're in the meeting, you can feel confident and relaxed and know that the people in there care about you. And it's a funny thing because when people say that, you go, oh, why doesn't some strangers, I need to tell you a real quick story here. When I first came in, and people were so nice to me. I didn't get it, and I thought, man, I'm going to have to do something for these people. I just know it. They're going to ask me to do something that I really don't want to do, and that never happened. The only thing that happened to me is people invited me to their homes. I'm not saying this is always the way that it goes, but they invited me to their homes. They always asked me how I was, which was so important to me because all I ever heard was, how's your wife doing? Is she okay? And it was like, what about me, man? I'm going crazy over here. So, getting back to that is we really need to know that rock bottom could be anytime, anywhere. It could be the first day you go down and you come home and the guy says, or the gal says, I'm not going to drink anymore. And they don't. I have to tell you that when my wife came out of rehab, the only thing that I thought is I had a 12-day vacation. And when she comes back, we're going right back to step one. Not step one, but day one.
Yeah, day
It's
one.
a better way of saying it. Yeah, and it didn't happen that way because she was dedicated to her recovery. Did it have anything to do with me? No, except I loved her and I wanted her to get better, but I couldn't make her get better. I couldn't have her do the work. So immediately, she started to go to meetings, and she still does. Almost 11 years later, she's leading meetings and doing the things she needs to do because she knows that she needs it to stay sober and safe and happy.
Yeah, and that's a big deal. A lot of times in these recovery programs, only one person in the family is actually in recovery, and the other people stay active. So, I mean, you have to recognize it's a real blessing that both of you are in recovery, and you can speak the same language too.
Yeah.
What was I going to make a point?
That's absolutely right, and we know that people lose their marriages. A lot of people lose their marriages and the life they had, but we hope and we pray that if they did lose that marriage, they're happier than they were when they were in it. For us, we've been married for so long, we didn't know anything else. But the same token is there were nights when I sat there and thought to myself, boy, it would be nice to have my own place and be on my own and not have to go through this every night. But the fact of the matter is that's when I really realized I loved my wife. I wanted to be with her no matter what. But I didn't know how much the misery was going to go on. Like I said, when she first came home, I just thought, this is my life. Dig in, Don. And, I had came up poor. I'd been in the service. I'd been in the war. And I knew things could get really bad and I could make it through. That doesn't mean I wanted to. So you can imagine how I felt. And then I go to Al-Anon and they say there's a way to be happy. There's a way to be different than you used to be. There's a way to gain trust. And I thought, oh my gosh, really? And I guess what happened to me was that I realized that I'd finally found a place. All my life I'd probably been searching for it, did not know it. I finally found a place where not only could I feel safe, but I could grow. And I was an old dude, man. I was 65 when all this started. So I was set my ways pretty good. So for me to change, I only say this not bragging on myself, but I tell people, younger people, if I can change at 65, you certainly can change at 40 or 50 or 20.
Yeah.
Please give it a try.
Right. Well, and it brings up the point, you're only as sick as your secrets. So if you're saying that whole isolation thing, when we're in isolation, we're stewing on stuff and bottling it up and keeping it inside. That's when we're at our sickest because we tend to
Yeah.
stress and think about the same things over and over and we drive ourselves crazy. Getting out and talking about the things that are troubling us with people who are safe, that's a big deal. Then it lightens the load. You don't need to think about it anymore. You've been validated, you've been heard. And sometimes that's the most important part of recovery is just feeling like you've been heard. No, seems like your screen froze for a second there. You still with me?
So much shame. And so you start to be honest. And here comes the revelation. Everybody knew anyway.
Right.
Lots of people knew. And then the people that you didn't know, they go, oh my gosh, not her. No way. But then you realize that there's love out there for you, but you got to go for it. And if you isolate, you spend 24 hours 7 days a week, and if you isolate, you're just feeding yourself negative thoughts. You know, I'm not as good as that other person, and if they knew what was going on here, they'd go crazy. There's another thing that I say a lot in meetings. Look, if you went down your street and knocked on every door, and the people behind that door were 100% truthful, they would tell you there's something going on in that house they don't like, whether they have an angry teenager or a husband and wife aren't getting along, or they got a crazy dog, whatever it is, there's something going on there that they're not happy with. But when we isolate, we think we're the only ones. And when you think you're the only ones, you feel shame. You do. You feel shame.
Yeah, yeah, we have that term in recovery, terminal uniqueness, thinking that you're the only one that has it that bad.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, if you only knew my story, and then you hear some story, and you go, "Holy crap! I am blessed that I didn't have to go through that." And a lot of times, what happens too is the reverse, Jeff. As you know, when you do have some recovery, people look at you, "Oh, you're so lucky, man." I experienced the same crap you did, buddy or gal, and it's like I get it. So once they get that you've been there too, it's much easier for them to feel comfortable to share. And I think what happens, and you probably see it a lot, when you go into a meeting and there's new people, they don't want to share right away. And then it goes around the table and they go, "Oh, I'm right where I'm supposed to be."
Yeah.
And no share. And sometimes it's very emotional for them, but also we want new ones that we can identify with that. I love the meetings. They're very important part of the program, and I love when they're strong because the idea about it, they push that one thing that you'd forgot that you're dealing with every day, and you're not handling it well, and they gave you an example of what they did, and you go, "Oh yeah, I could probably do that," and vice versa. Maybe you say something one week, and a person goes, "Man, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard." 3 weeks later, they go, "Oh, that's what Don was talking about, or that's what Jeff was talking about. Now I get it." But we got to keep going. We got to get the wisdoms of others, and we've got to open our hearts and our minds to change. Is good. It is good, but it's not easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah, well, and you know, I feel that people tend to hold on to anger, uh, and when you're angry, it's really hard to receive new information. I remember at a table somebody told me about HHP, health, happiness, and prosperity. That if you're upset at somebody for any reason, then you wish them health, happiness, and prosperity. Keep doing that until you're no longer angry with them. Well, when I first heard that, I went, "The hell with that. I want to kill these guys. I don't, I'm not going to wish them health, happiness. I want to see them under a bus." But eventually it takes, and you realize, yeah, this is helping me when I can wish somebody that I'm upset at, well, then I free myself from a prison of anger, you know, because they're not hurting
I
me
get it.
at them.
Yeah, yeah, you made me think of a story that happened to me a couple of weeks ago, maybe a week ago. As you know, I had to move my office, and I got a lot of help. I had to ask, and I sweated a couple of days there where I thought, I'm not going to get all this heavy stuff out of this office because I don't have anybody that has any muscles that wants to help me. All I know is older people. So anyway, and one of the persons that really helped me a lot was my wife, but I took that for granted a little bit. So anyway, we went out to dinner. I wanted to take her out to dinner, and we got in a squabble in the parking lot. Just a tiff. It wasn't, screaming or yelling or anything, but it just a tiff. So we were ignoring each other all through the meal. I just didn't want to talk to her. Finally, we went out, and we were being civil, but it was like, man, just leave me alone because I don't want to talk to you. And then she felt the same way, I'm sure. So we're walking out. Honest to God, Jeff, this is how spirituality works in the program. We're walking out, and there's this old guy, and he can barely walk. He's got two canes, and he's so unstable that he has to handle the canes, and they're more like walking sticks than canes per se. He has to have them way out from his body, and then his legs barely work. And he looks at me and he goes, "Is this your first time here?" We're on the sidewalk going to our car. He says, "Is this your first time here?" No, I said, "No, I've been here a few times." And he goes, "Oh, I heard the hamburgers are great here." And I go, "Yeah, they really are. I've had them. They're not." And he said, "You didn't have one today?" And I go, "No, I had fish and chips." And he said, "How was that?" And I said, "It was great." He said, "The fish is really good here?" I go, "Yeah, it's really great." And he had me grinning from ear to ear, and my wife too. And I thought to myself, you know, in the old days, I probably would have walked away from this guy and said, "Yeah, it's great," walked away, and then just wanted to strangle my wife. And it turned the whole day around for both of us. It was just like, where did this guy come from? And the timing of it was, we left at that certain time. He was coming in at a certain time. Now, that's the spiritual part of the program, but it's also shows you that your thinking is different now. You don't have to dwell on something. You're going to get mad. You're human. You're going to get angry. You're going to want things going a different way than they're going. But if you can keep that balance and say, you know what, it's a moment in time. I'm going to stay in this moment and make it better. It just life turns around for you, and it almost sounds corny when you tell people that, but it works. And then once, it works a lot because your mind is set a different way. You're not thinking about those negative things. Hey, wait till we get home. I'm going to give it to her right between the eyes because nobody around to see me.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's anger, resentment, and immaturity. So another thing that I'll say real quick, I don't want to ramble here, but one of the things the program gives you is your ability again to have mature relationships because you let some of that go with your anger and resentment. Oh, woe is me, and you can't get over that hump of being mature in your relationships. How much does it matter? Why am I being unkind to this person that I love or people that are different from me? I don't know. I haven't walked in their shoes. I've got to start loving people right where they're at. And it works.
Yeah. Well, and most anger is two things. First, it's a trauma response. You're not really upset about the situation that's happening. You're upset about what it reminds you of, about all the times in the past that you've been part of this, didn't get your way, and it's like, no, it's this again. And so you get angry. But anger is actually it's one of the seven deadly sins. Wrath is is a sin. And a sin, if you take out the religious context, the sin is just a harmful behavior. You're hurting yourself when you hold on to anger or act on anger. And I've done that so much. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so involved in recovery right now is because I have a big mess to clean up from my past for, giving in to anger all the time. And your story, it's just, you're right. That's the spiritual dimension of life. That's synchronicity. That man came in at the exact right moment and tuned you back into peaceful living. And if you hadn't had a spiritual foundation, you would have just blown him off and kept going.
Absolutely right. And this is what we try to tell people when they first come in. Is just keep coming back. It may seem weird to you, people are being nice to you. What the hell is this all about? What do they want? Like I first said. But really, if you keep coming back, you can look at yourself realistically. You don't have to beat yourself up, but man, you got to start getting better. I mean, you are not going to be happy until you can look in that mirror and say, "Hey, I'm the best I could be today, and tomorrow, hopefully, I'll be a little better." Or if I'm not a little better, I'll work on it. And that's all. That's all it really is. It's just I want to tell people sometimes, and again, we don't want to advise them too much. We want them to work a program that they're involved in. Is be good to yourself, and don't make this more difficult than it is. The more that it becomes second nature, the easier it is. But again, you got to start the work, and start with baby steps. Just showing up, just show up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's like that's another good point. Recovery is not therapy, and it's right in the traditions. We're not here to give advice on family matters. We're that's you know we I'm not here to say you should leave your wife. That's completely off. That's none of my business. That's none of my concern. My job in recovery is to, share confessions and tell people what recovery options have helped me. I can't look at your life and just take a snapshot picture of it and suddenly know what's best for you. But you know what's best for you deep down. Once you
Yeah,
get peaceful, once you get, you start working these steps and you start, taking in the process of recovery, you'll be able to figure out for yourself what you need to be doing that you couldn't figure out before because you were too keyed up, too upset, and too distracted by your emotions, So,
that's exactly right. And you're always going to have emotions. You're human. You're going to have emotions. But how do you measure those emotions? How do you, I don't want to say control, probably a better word is, how do you realize what's happening in the moment and take care of your business when you need to? When you were talking there, I was thinking of a situation where my wife's known me for since I was 23. So what's that, 53 years? But guess what? I've known myself for 76 years. So
yeah, so
I have 23 years on her. So we might know just a little bit more about ourselves than other people do.
yeah, right. So, yeah, definitely. Anything else that you would like to try to, I mean, if you could package up all of your experience in recovery and it to somebody in its most useful form, what would you tell somebody who has friends, family, loved ones who are struggling with addiction? What's been the most effective thing for you to do for yourself?
Oh, well, it's easy and complex, but simple too. But out. You can't make somebody recover if they don't want to. So, but out of kind of trying to control them, take care of yourself. Learn how to love yourself. I really truly believe this. I believed this probably before, but I really practice it. You cannot love anybody else until you start loving yourself. And what do we mean like that? We don't mean that, hey, with all my uh, hard edges and stuff like that, I'm still perfect. No, we're not perfect, but we can see who we are, who we really are, and the goodness in us. That's why the spiritual program is so important. We've got to look for something outside of ourselves to satisfy some of those needs, but we also have to love ourselves. So here, how do we do that? By being kinder and gentler, uh, by having staying in the moment is a really good way to do that. Don't project. For example, when you told me about doing this in the old days, I would have fretted. I would have been doing readings about what I should say and all that. A long time ago, when I first met my sponsor, I was in the car with him. We were going somewhere. I was complaining about something. And I said, yeah, I got my talk ready for the meeting tonight. And he goes, what? I said, I got my talk ready for the meeting tonight. And he goes, no. When you get in that meeting, you talk from your heart, or otherwise nobody's going to listen to you, Don. They don't want any prepared thing. They don't want you taking notes. And it stuck with me, and that's how I've always tried to be. So what I would say is bring who you are right now to the meeting, and then work on yourself every day. Care about yourself. And what happens when you start caring about yourself, you naturally care about other people because you realize you're flawed. So they're going to be flawed too. So now you start to get acceptance in your life. You accept how it is, not how you want it to be, because how you want it to be probably isn't any good anyway. Because you're thinking crazy. What's that saying we always say? Stinking thinking.
Yeah.
That's what happens. So generally speaking, I would say start off by caring for yourself. Get yourself some help, whatever it might be. Remember that if you're dealing with somebody in substance abuse and you have family and friends that they're not going to really be able to help you. They're going to love you. They'll love on you, but they can't help you. So get somewhere where you can get real help from people who've experienced the same thing you have. And that's when it really, really gets better. Even professionals, when they're talking to their patients, they will send them to recovery groups because they know what works is talking to somebody that has experienced what you have. And that's all we're doing. We're not telling you what to do. We're talking about what happened to us
Yeah.
and what we did to feel better.
Right. I keep referring to it as shared confessions. You tell me something, and when I sit at a table and I say, my name is Jeff, I'm an alcoholic, my name is Jeff, I'm a codependent, I give permission to everybody at the table to admit those faults too. It like lifts the pressure. Oh, well, here's a guy, he's already said it, so now it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't matter what the character default is. I tell people that I'm a terrible driver all the time. I tell them that because I'm trying to become more aware of it so that I'll be a
Right.
better driver. But when I admit that, I'm almost guaranteed somebody else at a table is going to say, "Yeah, I'm the same way. I drive way too fast. I cut people off. I flip people off, and it's something I need to work on." And that's basically how we work on it, is admitting that there is a problem.
I think you made me smile when you said that because I was thinking of something that we got to watch out for. What you said was you pinpoint what you're going through, and that is really how people can relate to you. I'm in a meeting one time, and I'm feeling good about myself. Boy, I'm recovering, man. I am king of recovery right here. And so I talk about it, and I think I'm doing good and everything. So my sponsor gets me in the corner after the meeting. He goes, "Thanks for the open talk." So what he actually meant was, instead of telling my story as, excuse me, instead of saying how I'm feeling or what I went through, I was telling my life story. And he said, "They don't really need your life story, Don. You need to stick to the subject, whether it's step 3 or step 5 or codependency or isolation or whatever. Talk to that because you've done all those, right?" And I go, "Oh, hell yes, I still do them." Yeah, when you said that, it really it hit a chord with me because that's kind of what we got to watch when we've had some experience, that we're not supposed to advise people and we're not supposed to give open talks unless somebody says, "Hey, Don, you want to do an open talk?" And then you can do it, right? So anyway, that hit home for me, and I remember that night so well because I thought I'd done so wonderful, this wonderful Don in the meeting, letting people know how it is, and it's like, don't give a damn open talk, Don. Come on.
Well,
Anyway,
part of what I do, I also sponsor people like you do. I know that you sponsor several people, and including me.
yeah,
But one of the things I like to do is point out to people that denial is a very sincere state of mind, that we
yeah,
sincerely don't know how harmful what we are doing is. And there's all these behaviors that go with denial: lying, cheating, sneaking, stealing, hiding. All of those things become natural behaviors for somebody who's trapped in an addiction, who's in denial about their conditions. And we all do it. It's any addiction that you have. It doesn't matter whether you're sneaking a piece of cake in the middle of the night. Well, realistically,
you were at my house last night.
it would have been me, but I'm out of cake.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
But everybody has some type of addiction, for the most part, even if it's just addicted to life. And it just means that we're too attached to something. And when you're too attached, you have all these behaviors. And so what everybody needs more of is acceptance. So the
Yeah,
way to treat somebody who's in denial is not by pointing out the denial or shaming them or trying to get them to stop. It's by accepting, hey, they can't control what they're doing right now. That person is trapped. They're sick. They need help, and nobody can give it to them because they're not ready for help. So, I mean, isn't that a lot of what we learn in this in the codependency program we're in?
yeah, absolutely. And the thing that happens, and we realize it pretty soon, is that we get crazy, but we have these, what do I want to say, character defects as big as and I think I said this earlier, as big as the addicted person did. They just turn to substance, but we turn to anger, resentment, isolation. We turn to all these things to protect ourselves from the fears that we have, and that's what they did. But they used substance. That's the only difference. And like you said, the problem when you use substances is it's addictive. But isn't our behavior addictive? Don't we get really good at being resentful? Don't we get really good at isolating? Don't we get really good at being so angry we almost kill somebody in traffic because it's like, yeah, you cut me off, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, we need to realize, and I don't want to say we're as sick as them, but sometimes we're just as bad off as they are. We've just used a different way to get to where they're at, and because we won't admit it, won't be accountable to ourselves, we're trying to fix them. We got to fix ourselves, man, and love them enough to, and give them the dignity enough to get well on their own with our love and our help.
Right. With support and non-judgment. And maybe you'll agree with me on this, but I find that when when we're trapped in our codependency, as codependents, we become very judgmental. And you've said earlier that we become very controlling, and those behaviors trigger the person in their addiction, and it may cause them to escalate their usage. They're now escaping the crap that we're dumping on them, which is another
Right.
reason why it's so important to start focusing on yourself, because you could be sick in a way that's causing somebody to use more.
Absolutely right. And that's exactly what happens, is that we look at them as the addicted person and then we become codependent with them. And we're going to try to cure them, right? And we make them even more miserable because all they're thinking about is the next drink. And
Yeah.
so they are going to find a way to hide it from you now. Because if they drink in front of you, you criticize and control them, right? So they're going to hide it. So that's why we always tell people don't pour the booze out. It doesn't matter. You don't have any control over what they're going to do. They're going to find a way to do it. Now, not want to be too much of a telltale, but my wife had little bottles in her purse. She had the basement. She knew there were certain rooms in the basement I never went into.
Hmm.
And if I did, I just maybe threw a pair of pants in the dryer or something. But I wasn't checking it out. So she could have her stuff wherever she wanted. And you're absolutely right. I was an enabler, so I went and got the stuff for her, but she was getting stuff too. So can you imagine? I'm thinking she drank this much when she probably doubled or tripled her consumption. So yeah, I don't want to say we get as crazy as them, but our addictions are just as bad as theirs, and we have to face up to them and understand them by sharing with people who get us. Yeah.
Right. And I've heard a number of people say early in recovery, well, if he loved me, he'd stop. And that is so far from true. That's not love. That's, again, it's a control issue thing. And B, if they love themselves,
Mhm.
they'd stop. It's when you learn to accept that you have a problem, that's when
All
you
right. Yeah.
deal with the problem. But the whole time when I was using, you're right, and I look back on those thoughts, it's so much different. When I'm trapped in codependency, I'm thinking about other people's problems. But when I'm trapped in my alcoholism, I was thinking about the next drink. What time does the party store close? What am I going to drink tonight? How much can I afford to get? What size bottle? Am I going to get the Seagrams or am I going to get the Canadian
Yeah.
Club? And it was just so many of my thoughts were consumed by drinking, and that's one of the keynotes
Yeah. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
any addiction is it's an obsession. It's literally an obsession. So I'm not thinking about the loved
Yeah.
ones in my life at all. I'm just thinking about I gotta get wasted because I can't live with myself. you know
Yeah. The substance. That's really funny. Here's a good example of that. I would be the enabler and go get the booze and stuff, right? And then I'd say something really intelligent, like, Kath, you got a 6-pack here, and you got a couple bottles of wine. It's Sunday night, that's it, come on. You go, oh, yeah, absolutely. And then I'd be sitting there maybe half an hour later, and she'd go, Don, Menage a Trois has a sale, 3 for $10. Menage a Trois is a wine, a red wine. 3 for $10. We shouldn't pass that sale up. And guess what? Don would go to the drugstore and pick up the Menage a Trois. And what was funny about it is when I would go, because I did it quite often, the ladies at the counter, I got to know them, and they'd say, "Boy, I wish I was at your house. You always have some nice drinks and stuff like that." And I just wanted to scream, "This is not for me." But again, I thought I was protecting my wife, by just saying, "Yeah, yeah,
Right, keeping her from driving.
probably." Right, yeah, exactly right. Funny thing was, when I did finally decide that I wasn't going to enable her, there's a liquor store right at the corner. She just walked up there. And then my neighbors would come out, and it'd be summertime. And we were very close to our neighbors at that time. And they'd come out and they go, "Is that Kathy coming down the street with a bag of groceries?" And I go, "Yeah." It was wine, of course, and beer. And they go, "You couldn't drive her to the grocery store, Don?"
Right.
And I go, "No." And I wanted to say, because it's effing booze. But I couldn't. But I think they knew. But it was this, no, I'm not driving her. So, of course, the next time when it was time to, at least she did that. She knew not to drive when she was drunk. But I have to admit that she did drive when she was high on Xanax and stuff. So, I mean, they or alcoholics or addicted people exactly think about the next drink or the next drug, and they're not thinking about anything else. That is hard to comprehend for somebody that doesn't fix their, but it's really easy for me when I see somebody acting out in anger and stuff. I go, wow. Now I do anyway. I look at them and go, man, that used to be me. God, I hate that person. Anyway.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing. See, codependency, as you know, codependency is just as much of an addiction as gambling, sex, porn, drugs, alcohol, all these things. But people who have codependency are not aware of what their addiction is. You have to look at that element of obsession. So when I'm an alcoholic, I'm obsessing about alcohol. When I'm active in my addiction. Codependents are obsessing about other people. Your focus is all on them and their problems and what their behaviors are, and you're driving yourself crazy focusing on things that are completely outside of your control and none of your business. Frankly, so you mentioned enabling, and enabling is another one of those severely codependent behaviors. We keep doing stuff that we don't want to do at all, and then we complain about it. And codependents also become chronic complainers because we're constantly doing things that are not in our best interest, and it pisses us off. But we're the ones that are doing it.
Right.
I mean,
yeah. So, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was done. Go ahead. I thought you might.
So anyway, yeah. So the addicted personality that tries to cure their problems with substance, they drink beer or take drugs. What do the people that deal with them? They have codependency, isolation, anger, resentment, and they're all addictions, aren't they? We get addicted. We can be the best angry person you'd ever known in your life. We could win an award for being angry. We could win an award for being an isolator. I know how to stay in the house for 3 or 4 days without even going out. I don't need to. So I mean, that's what we got to get clear in our mind. That's why it's so important to get to these meetings and talk to other people. We have to understand that we have problems too. It's not just them, and we're not. When we go out and try to fix them, we just compound everything that's wrong in the relationship. We just compound it. We pile on, as I say, and I did that a lot. I piled on because I didn't understand what I was doing. I thought I was doing it through love, but I was actually doing it through codependence, anger, resentment. Why me? Why us? Why now? 2 old folks that are supposed to be retired. Come on, stop it. Not, they can't stop. They need help. I need help. But when you admit you need help, that's the start. That's why we tell people, please come back. Just if you're not feeling anything except good about being here tonight or uncomfortable about being, just come back. It'll get better.
Yeah. While you're talking, it caused me to remember, we have somebody that we know, a lovely woman and her husband who are in recovery. And she would say at meetings that if you can do it with a happy heart, then it's okay. You know,
Yeah.
and that's a good measurement, you know. Yeah, are you doing something that's making you upset, or can you do it gleefully knowing that, you know, I'm doing something for them that they can't do for themselves, and it's, you know, I'm not expecting anything in return. You got to be able to let go of the expectation. And then that's no longer codependent behavior. That's you know, genuinely serving somebody else.
Yeah, and I want to say to anybody that's listening that's just starting out or has even been in the program for a long time, much like the alcoholic, we don't want to call ourselves, oh, I'm not codependent anymore. I'm not. We're a recovering codependent. We're a recovering isolator. We always got to keep in mind that we can slip right back into that. We train our mind on what we do, and if that's why people, oh, the guy's 30 years in Al-Anon. What the hell? Hasn't he learned anything? Yeah, he's learned a lot. That's why he keeps coming back. He realizes that he isn't always the master of his thoughts and his deeds, but he can get better by listening to people who are struggling either in the beginning of the struggle or the end of the struggle or somewhere in between. That's the beauty. That's the beauty of it. And it's like it keeps drawing you to it because you realize that, man, I can just fall off this cliff at any time. And
Right.
that's why, sometimes we're worried about the alcoholic having a relapse, but it's like, you know what? You need to take care of your own business. That alcoholic knows how to take care of themselves, and they have friends that will help them. They have loving people in their recovery group that will help them, and you take care of your business. Still, still, you have to love and respect everyone, especially your loved ones. But you also have to realize that you got to butt out.
Right. Right. And you know, that's, you mentioned this a couple times, and I'm going to try to put it into words. In one of the original fellowships, there's this expression that we're never cured of alcoholism, but we are given a daily reprieve based on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. And so 12-step meetings are part of that maintenance, you know. And for me personally, I'm not comfortable with less than 3 meetings a week. I'm not saying I never go with, you know, a week without less than three, but for the most part, three is the benchmark that I need to stay healthy. And that includes, you know, online meetings if I need to. Uh, I
Right.
I find that face-to-face meetings are better for me than online meetings, but online meetings are still great compared to no meeting at all. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, where are you at in your recovery? What's comfortable for you in terms of meetings? I mean, it
Well,
serves.
yeah, that's a really good question because I get questions about that a lot, even from my sponsor. Why don't you go to more meetings, Don? I go to one meeting. I work one day a week at an office that's a support group office. I also sponsor, right now, I'm sponsoring 4 people. And I talk to people who aren't in Al Anon anymore, but I've become friends with, and we share um, things about recovery. So I stay, and then I phone mine. We have, when the office isn't open, we still have to mind the phones because people will call and ask for help. And
Mhm.
usually it's to get to a meeting or maybe to order literature. It's something, but they don't always call, and they can't when we open only one day. Now I want to go a little bit farther with that opening one day. The only reason we're open one day is that really is about keeping busy. We could be open all week, but we probably waste 30 some hours being open all week, maybe more.
Yeah.
So we only open one week because that's what works for us. The other part of it is that I find my recovery works well when I can do my work at the office, talk to my folks, talk to people, share some stuff with my wife. So I have Al-Anons in my life pretty regular. So I know that a lot of people will go to 3 meetings and that's all they'll do in Al-Anon. And I think that's really good because that works for them. That's what their balance is. For me, my balance is working at the office, talking to the people I sponsor, getting to one meeting. Once in a while, I'll go to two, and then I also I try to practice if people can't get to me on Tuesday, I'll actually meet them halfway somewhere. So I'm constantly thinking about Al-Anon. For example, me and you, we every time we meet, we talk. I keep saying what I'm not supposed to say. Every time we meet, we talk about spirituality, codependency, and all that stuff. Uh, that's what keeps me going. And one of the guys that I sponsor, we have breakfast every Saturday morning, no matter what.
Mm.
We talk about codependency, how our wives are doing in their recoveries, et cetera, et cetera. So in that case, I get a lot of Al-Anon in my life. If I didn't think I did, I would go to more meetings. I thought a couple, 3 years ago that I was going to retire from this office. And my goal was to go to all the meetings where I'd work with people. And that would be 20 meetings, west side, east side, midtown, downtown. And it was a great dream, but it didn't come out. I just couldn't get anybody to replace me. That's neither here nor there. I really think that it's a spiritual thing where my higher power was saying, I need you to stay. And I accepted that. I wouldn't have in the old days. I would have, of course, I wouldn't have worked there in the old days. But you know what I mean? If I'd had a different type of job and I was forced to stay economic reasons or something, I think that I would have pissed and moaned, if I can say that.
Right.
I wouldn't have been happy, but I was thoroughly happy to stay. I guess that's what I'm saying. So that's what my Al-Anon measures out to. But I would tell you that my sponsor always says it, and I believe that you should probably make 3 meetings a day if you're not active in any other way.
Yeah, well, a week, like you said, but right, and everybody's recovery is different, and
A week.
what works for you. Plus, if you talk to a sponsee, if you talk to somebody on the phone, anytime 2 people meet and talk recovery, that qualifies as a meeting. So you're still
Yes.
getting in meetings, and it gets expensive to leave your home,
Yeah.
spend the money on gasoline to get to a meeting. If you're talking about driving all over the Metro Detroit area to hit meetings, you're going to be spending $100 plus a week on gas.
Yeah.
And when you're living on a fixed income, that's just not manageable. So, it's important. It's not so much important that you get to X number of meetings as it is that you do something more or less on a daily basis to maintain your spiritual fitness. It doesn't have to be meetings. It could be readings. You could be, spending an hour a day reading some type of recovery literature. So whatever it takes to keep you engaged in recovery on a regular basis, that's what I feel people should be doing for themselves.
It's absolutely right, and that's why we call it a personal program, because there's no one right way to do it. There's a lot of right ways to do it. Also, adding to that, my wife is in recovery now for 11 years, and we talk a lot about her program. She does 2 Zooms and then 2 live meetings a week, and that's what keeps her going. But it's really nice. It sounds really weird. It's really nice to have a recovering alcoholic in your home because you learn a lot from them too that you don't think about if you're just going to Al-Anon meetings. So that's been helpful to me too. I feel real comfortable with my recovery. I know that you said something about reading. I like that too, because what I've found is I've been really hungry, even in this old age, to learn more and more about how people think. And sometimes it's just reading a book like Social Psychology for Dummies. It doesn't have to be part of our approved literature, but anything that can improve my thinking and the way that I look at people, rather than an angry, resentful guy and measuring myself. It's another thing that these meetings will help you with. When we start taking care of ourselves and loving ourselves, we stop comparing. And that's really good, because that takes you down a dark road when you start comparing. Because when you compare, you're always comparing yourself to somebody that you want to be, but you can't be anybody but yourself. You got to watch that. And
Right.
I learned that the hard way.
Well, and to expand on that, I'd say we stop comparing and we start relating. It's like,
Yeah,
how am I
that's good.
like this person? Not how is that person different? And, uh, I'm going to judge the things that are different because I wouldn't do it that way, so it can't be right. No, it's definitely more of a relating thing. It's like I can relate to the fact that, some people don't do any face-to-face meetings because they can't get out of the house. They might have physical limitations, financial limitations, whatever. Some people will never go to any meetings. I deal with,
Yeah.
have a couple actual paying clients that just wouldn't go to a 12-step meeting. So they get everything from me. And,
Right.
I'm doing what I need to do, period. I do what I need to do for myself, and somebody else's recovery is really none of my business. It just asks mainly so that people know that there's more than one path, that there's no perfect
Yeah.
way, that you got to do what's going to work for you.
That's a good example of how people recover on the other side of the street too. Is I have a brother who went cold turkey after a bad accident. He was a big drinker. My other brother died being a big drinker. I don't want to call him alcoholics because that's not my place to do that. My dad went cold turkey. He stopped working. He retired. And he didn't drink anymore. It was really unexplainable. But of course, with my dad, I never thought of him as anything but somebody that drank a lot. I didn't think of him as being having a disease or anything. But as I look back at it now, I realized how unsettled our life was, if I can say that. Uh, but going back to that is that yeah, it's got to be very personal. It's got to be how you work it, and always remember that the steps are a roadmap there. That and I think they're a brilliant roadmap. I always say even on step four, when I think about step four, which is basically an inventory of yourself, trying to get to really know who you are. Uh, it was brilliant because what are we, especially uh, on both sides of the street? I shouldn't say especially on both sides of the streets. We're people that isolate. So the authors wrote, yeah, share this with your higher power. Think about it yourself, but share it with another person because they knew that we were isolators.
Yeah.
If you share with another person, you're for real. You're not beating around a bush, man. You got to share this crap. And the more honest you are, again, we go back to that word honesty, the more that you can figure out who you are. And when you share it with somebody that you really trust and you really respect, it's so freeing. It gives you a chance to really live the life that you were meant to live and to be the person you really meant to be, not the person that you present to the outer world or you put that mask on every day so that you can fit in. You don't have to fit in with anybody but yourself. And once you start loving yourself, again, there comes acceptance of other people, and you realize we're all flawed, but we're all loved by the same higher power, and he loves you in this moment more than he's ever loved you, no matter where you're at in your recovery or in the depths of despair. He's never loved you more than he loves you in this moment. That was very, very important to me because I really felt like I blew it. That's the best way I can say it. I blew my marriage. I blew my life. I blew the person I could be. And my higher power said, nope, you don't have to be that person anymore.
Yeah.
But, I'm 65, higher power. And he said, doesn't matter. You're 95. You do not have to be from this moment on. You don't have to be the person. That was very freeing to me.
Yeah, well, I support you on both those points. First, with the higher power thing, I think the higher power concept is so big in recovery because we need a benchmark for mental health. We can't just go based on our thoughts. It's our thoughts that are screwing us up.
Right.
But you and I are also big supporters of sponsorship. I,
Yes.
I didn't get a sponsor right away when I got back into recovery, but I started looking right away. And when I finally made the decision, it was based on who am I going to feel safe talking to?
Yeah. Absolutely.
That worked out perfect for me. You've been a great sponsor. You've been a great support, And I model a lot of what I do for other people on what I learned working with you. Just be somebody safe, a good listener. Don't try to control. Don't be a hard ass and say you got to do it this way. Uh, some people need that. I've heard a lot of people tell me they needed somebody that was going to push them through, and that's
Right.
style. If you want somebody to push you through, you'll have to find somebody else. But
Yeah,
if you
I get
don't
it.
have a
Yeah.
sponsor in recovery, I think you're really selling yourself short, that you're not taking full advantage of what's available to you.
I absolutely agree. I don't see how you can do a program without sponsorship. I know people do, and I'm not dogging them, but what you said about being hard, I knew I needed somebody that would be not hard. I don't want to say hard. That's the wrong word. I wanted somebody that would be truthful with me because I, I'm good at sloughing off. Uh, at least I was in the past. I think I'm much better at that. I've learned how to make myself available. I guess that's what I never used to do. I wouldn't make myself available. Anyway, so I needed somebody, and I still do that calls me out if I need calling out, and it's not in a harsh way. I mean, that same person that calls me out is the same person that up for me every time I needed help. I mean, real help, real world help that was more than recovery. It was part of the recovery, some financial help I needed and stuff like that, and sent me in the right direction. So yeah, a sponsor can be anything you want them to be. Uh, or her, but it's really important that they have a connect. They can connect with you, and also that they're very serious about recovery. It's really important. And I get questions a lot about how do I get a sponsor, and it's hard to just give that just a little phrase. But I normally tell them as you go to meetings. This is why we ask you to go to more than one, because you want to find that person that you identify with, and bigger than that, you feel safe with. So if you need somebody to kick you in the butt, that still means you're going to feel safe with them because that's what you need. Or if you need somebody to be gentle and kind and considerate, remember always this. I always think of this when I say sponsors. I'm not going to sponsor people like my sponsor sponsored me because I thought that was great for me. I'm going to sponsor them from who I am, who I've changed to, and who I want to be. And that works. That's what works.
Hmm.
Uh, I have a guy that I sponsor. I don't think he memorizes every steps. I don't want to take anybody's inventory. He's good. He knows more about Al-Anon than I do, but he doesn't work on those outside things like codependency and stuff that he really needs to work on. And it's frustrating to me because he has so much to offer, but he doesn't offer it to himself. I worry about that.
Yeah,
Anyway, I probably wouldn't have said that, but it reminded me of that because there's so many ways to get well. There's no one right way, but sponsorship is extremely important. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and in reference to that behavior, again, denial is a sincere thing, and until we hurt ourselves enough and see hope for something better, it's hard to let something go. We need to have the combination of those two things. First, I got to hurt myself enough, then I need to recognize there's a better way. Then I'll change. Until then, I'm going to stay stuck in any number of behaviors. I mean, I'm
Right.
still addicted to caffeine. I'm still addicted to sugar and salt, dairy products, sleeping. I love sleeping. I can sleep away an entire weekend, no problem,
Me too.
So, all right, now, well, we are past the hour mark. And for a second, I thought
Okay.
we might not make it. Now we're actually over. So, as always, a great conversation with you. I hope this helps inspire a lot of people. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being a solid sponsor for me. And we'll see you at the meetings.
Well, thanks, Steve. Steve, I was thinking of my sponsor.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate you and all you do, and I'm very proud to know you. And I think you've done a wonderful job on both sides of the street. And this kind of talk like this really, I think, help people. It's just another venue for them to get help because that's what we need. And we got to help each other. We don't want to get in each other's business, but we need to help each other, and that's the key to everything. Once we start loving ourselves and give of ourselves, everything starts turning around really fast, faster than you'd ever imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, synchronicity,
Yeah,
miscommunication with Selena, and it turned out that that worked out well because we had more open dialogue, and not all of these things are open dialogue. So you know, thanks. I think it's
yeah.
not
Thanks a
perfect.
lot, Joe.
All right, we will see you soon, buddy.
Okay.